am going to bring back Solomon. Who don't like it, complain to the commission. None of them going to tell me how to run my country. I defy any one of you to dictate for me. I am no dictator, but when I pass an order, Mr. Speaker, this matter must go no further. I have nothing more to say, and it must be done my way. Come on, come on, come on, meeting done for the day. This land is mine, I am the boss. What I say goes, and who backs laughs. I say that Solomon will be Minister of External Affairs. If you ain't like it, get to hell out of here.
What an entry song. What an entry song. My name is Attila, and this is I Belong to the House of Music inside the Wajang Discotheque. Well, the Wajang Discotheque take a little shift from Belmont to Brixton. And so here we are in Brixton Market, the iconic, in this space called Veg and Ting, which is owned and operated by a saltfish called Brian Danclair from Eastport of Spain, who is now doing big things in just spreading the word of Caribbean food in London. Babylon. Welcome, Anthony Joseph.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you.
It's so good to finally have you inside the Wajang Discotheque, inside the House of Music. You certainly belong to the House of Music.
Yes, I hope so.
Musician, novelist, poet. You have a way with words, a wielder of words, and dancer man.
Yeah.
Sing out things.
Yeah, okay.
Welcome, and it's a great pleasure. And I mean, your first tune, Get to Hell Out of Here. I mean, and of course, Sparrow is a great point of departure for this conversation.
Yeah.
Where we're talking about home and going away and finding peace and making art in spaces that are not necessarily comfortable.
That's right.
So let's start by talking about Sparrow.
Yeah.
How Sparrow is a source of inspiration for you, and especially that song.
Yeah, when I was a young child, I grew up with my grandparents. I grew up with my grandmother and grandfather. And my grandfather had a few records in the house. Like we had maybe 5 or 6 records. No sleeves, the style.
Yeah.
Just rough, And one of them was this Congo Man album. Yeah. So from an early age, I mean, this is probably one of the earliest calypso records that I remember my grandfather playing, And I must have been, 3 or 4. And it stuck. It was one of these things that he would play. He would play it every Christmas.
Yeah.
He'd bring it out on Christmas Day and play it. And this record, I got to know it so well that I knew where every little scratch of the record was. I learned all the words. I was fascinated by the words of the songs, So I could choose anything from that album. But for me, Get the Hell Out was always the one, musically, lyrically. Yeah, that was the one. So it just reminds me of that time being really small.
Yeah.
Getting exposed to Sparrow and Calypso for the first time,
Yeah. And you grew up, which part of Trinidad did you grow up?
I grew up in Mount Lambert.
Right.
I grew up in Mount Lambert.
Right.
Yeah, I grew up in Mount Lambert, which is kind of, 8 miles out of Port of Spain, going east, something like that.
Yeah.
Suburb, quite calm.
But very kind of borderline-ish.
Yeah.
So it's very middle class, lower middle class, working people.
That's right.
Very African in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Not sour.
Absolutely.
But not St.
Not
Joseph.
country. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that was the upbringing. So, growing up there, my friends, we were listening to, the music we were listening to was eclectic, let's say. There's a lot of reggae around. There's a lot of rock music. We're listening to a lot of stuff. This is the 80s, So you're right. It's that kind of working class, lower working class kind of vibe. You know,
Yeah.
my grandfather was well, he wasn't actually my blood grandfather. He was my grandmother's man. Let's put it like that. You know, but he owned Hoyt's Furniture Shop, which was kind of famous back then. So he had a bit
Yeah,
of
I
money,
remember
you know.
Hoyts,
You remember,
yeah.
yeah. So he was
Yeah.
quite, you know, we were comfortable. It was a
Yeah.
comfortable thing.
Yeah.
But they were old school, you know. My grandmother
Yeah.
was from country. She was from Cora and Santa Cruz and kind of
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
he was very strict, Bajan heritage. So yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
intense. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah. That whole culture of sometimes the first grandchild going to live with the grandparents.
Yeah.
That's like almost ubiquitous across the region. I mean,
Okay.
like, you hear stories like, yeah, I live with my grandmother, and I personally feel it's a very African tradition for the first grandchild. Are you
Right.
the first grandchild?
I was, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
to go and live with the grandparents, and that child is the one who kind of gets that sort of indoctrination into certain traditions. They get the
Yeah.
stories, they get
Right.
the music.
Absolutely.
What was your life like? Yes, it was strict, but what other riches did you get from that grandparents' life?
Well, my grandmother was a huge influence in my life at that point. She still is to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She was Paniol, you know,
Yeah.
Paniol woman, very gentle, very wise, very kind. A lot of stories, you know. She was kind of I think I got a lot of my sort of absurdist
Yeah.
sort of mentality from her, because she would tell me some really weird stories that she would just make up on the spot. You know, like
Yeah.
one day we were watching in the savannah. We live next to the savannah. She was telling me, "See that balloon? And there's this balloon. Somebody let go a balloon from somewhere and it's
Yeah.
floating." And she said, "If that balloon ever touched the ground, the world will end." You know? And I'm watching this thing. Oh no, no. She was that kind of woman, you know. And
Yeah.
stories, and just vibes. You know, she
Yeah.
was great. So she was a real sort of beautiful presence,
Yeah.
and she was my father's mom. So through her, I got a love for my father that my brother who lived with my mom didn't have.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So and
Yeah.
plus her family. What was beautiful about her family was that they came from Santa Cruz, and a lot of them were in Malik Village. So I would get to enter into that real sort of working class, lower, I guess, working class
Yeah.
vibe
Yeah.
up in the hills of Malik,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got both sides,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was great.
Track 2.
Oh, yeah.
For 10 long years, we ruled the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming to an end. But down here, just a chink in the armor is enough to lose a friend. Some of the old generals have retired and gone, and the runs don't come as they did before. But when the two says go, don't you know the desert leaves come? We've lost the battle, but yet we will win the war. As long as we rally We gonna rise again like a raging fire. As the sun shines, you know we gon' take it higher. We gotta rally, rally round the West Indies, now and forever. Yes, rally, rally round the West Indies, stoke up the fire, way down under.
Now and forever. Do you still support West Indies?
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a huge cricket man, but you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, you know, it's in the DNA.
It's in the DNA, yeah. I mean, West Indies cricket has become so complicated.
That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
And I mean, certainly the name West Indies also comes with so
problematic,
much,
Yeah.
so much problem.
Yeah, it's probably.
Yeah. But why that song in particular? I mean, you could have picked so many Rudder songs.
Rudder is tricky, man, because you know, there's so much choice with him, you know. So I went through a whole range of things, and when I played this, as we say, my paws
Your
raised,
paws raised.
and I was like, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's a vibe. I mean, I think there's something in that tune. The rhythm of it is a
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something that is quite, I don't want to say Africa, but it is Africa. It is African. It's an African vibe, African rhythm. And lyrically, you know, as a rallying cry for the Caribbean, you know, I think it's beyond the cricket song. It's not, I mean, he knew it wasn't just a cricket song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, it goes beyond that, you know. When the two saints go, the
Dessalines
Dessalines come.
come. Yeah.
You know, I think in this song is one of his classic lines as well. In these tiny theaters of conflict and confusion, better known as the Isles of the West Indies. You know, there's so much in there.
Yeah, no, it's a multi-layered song. It definitely is a multi-layered
And you
song.
know, it reminds me of a particular time in Trinidad as well, in sort of late 80s, coming up to the time when I left, you know, I think it was like 87, 88 maybe.
Yeah.
And that whole energy in Trinidad, I mean, Rudder was a shift for us, a shift in consciousness, you know?
Yeah.
So definitely, it reminds me of that period when it was like an opening of the eyes. you know,
Yes.
musically and spiritually and culturally, you know.
Yeah. Because, I mean, yes, we also did a house of music with Rudder. And one of the things that, you know, I was trying to say to him is, you know, in a way, he was able to bring all the things that our grandmothers were singing and saying to us at home into a very mainstream space.
Yeah.
And make it normal.
Yeah.
And make it, you know, and not apologize.
That's right.
For seeing those connections and seeing those similarities,
absolutely.
you know, and, you know, like
Yeah.
delving into the Shango and delving into the spiritual Baptist and, you know, normalizing those things for us in a way that...
But with a worldview as well.
With a worldview as well. You know, I mean, I mean, the classic line from Bahia Girl, Ilia Ife, she make me to understand, you know, just suddenly just broadens the horizon out of Trinidad into the entire world. You know,
it's a contextualization.
Into the African world as well, you know, in a way that, you know, perhaps Calypso wasn't doing before. You know,
absolutely.
so
absolutely.
I mean,
there were people before him that were kind of pointing in that direction.
Yeah.
I think Shorty was kind of pointing.
Shorty,
Shadow,
Superior,
definitely.
Shadow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's something about him, he captured the minds of the youth. There was something very fresh about the music, you know, that we gravitated to straight away, you know. Yeah. And I had the opportunity to work with him later on as well, and, you know, to know him. I mean, I think I pestered him for many years, you know, hanging out of the side of the truck, and, you know, the
like,
roots truck. Yeah, exactly. Going up to him in parties, and, you know, and eventually, you know, we got to work together, which was beautiful. Yeah. Special.
What's it like for you to interact with people who you, at one point, you know, you imagine and fantasize about working with, and then getting the opportunity to work with them?
It's a different vibe. I think, you know, with Rudder, with people like Rudder and people like who I've worked with, like Bugsy, like Ella Andal, there's a kind of reverence that I have for them that I don't have for other artists that I might work with. You know, I've worked with a lot of people, you know, in Europe and whatever, the US or whatever. But with them, it's a lot more how to say, reverence.
Yeah.
You know, I come to them as I'm reverent. I look up to you. I'm standing on your shoulders. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a lot more reverence. With Rudder, yeah, even though, I work with him and we got to know each other on a friendly basis, I'm still Mr. Rudder.
Yeah.
I will never call him Dave. Hey, David. It's like Mr. Rudder. Thank you. With
Yeah.
Ella, it's like, there's a reverence. I think
Yeah.
that was the vibe because they form your consciousness. They're part of who you are. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They kind of form your consciousness growing up as a Trinidadian. They have a
Yeah.
real impact on who you see yourself to be
Yeah.
in a way that's different from any other artists that you might work with. They're really, Rudder form part of my consciousness, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
People like Ella Andal, big influence, big impact,
Yeah.
Yeah, resistance. We'll talk about it. But yeah, they're important to
Yeah.
who you are, as
Yeah.
as opposed to someone you might come across and you like the music. They're not spiritually and culturally connected to you in that way.
Yeah.
With these guys, it's a direct spiritual and cultural connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Short drop giving me the sign. Track number 3.
Poverty is hell, and the angels are in paradise, driving in their limousine, where everything is nice and clean. A poor man living in a teeny weeny hut, children hungry, nothing in the pot. He gone by the neighbor to beg for some rice. The neighbor under pressure by things ain't nice. He gone in the big shot area to beg. A police put a bullet in his teeny weeny leg. He gone in the courts and he lost the case. The prosecutor say he have a bandit face. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. Wake up in the morning and the baby cry. The sugar pan empty, the milk bottle dry. The little boy child on the mango tree. The mango green, fatting up his belly. The young girl falling, she wouldn't settle. She white, she bum, she wet, skinny nettle. Toilet paper, they never had. They used to put two in the gully by the old backyard. They rub she down and they put she to sleep. The rain come down and the house does leak. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. A poor man always dream another dream. He happy like a puppy when he dream another dream. He dream that he have a new roof on the house.
Yeah. We could write theses.
Yeah.
Theses about this track,
Yeah.
Poverty is Hell,
Yeah.
by the late great Winston Bailey, the Shadow. And as I was saying to you, has a Calypsonian ever sung tutu in a calypso
Oh man.
and get away with it?
Yeah. I can't think of anybody that's done
No,
that. No.
I can't.
But he
either.
was like that. He could do that. He could do that.
Yeah.
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 The thing with Shadow, though, we could talk a lot about Shadow, but for me, what struck me about Shadow the first time I heard him when I was a child was the voice.
Yeah.
The voice. It was like nothing else in Calypso. That deep,
Yeah.
the dreadness of the voice.
The dreadness of the
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like this idea of of hell being a reparatory space for African people, and the fact that Shadow took ownership of hell
Yeah.
and his blackness
Yeah.
in a way that
Yeah.
it wasn't even coming from it wasn't black is beautiful.
Hmm.
It was black is terror.
Yeah.
And if you're afraid of me, well, okay, well let's
Yeah,
deal
yeah,
with
yeah.
that fear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a completely different approach
Yeah.
to the notion of blackness. And even the notion of, obia, like pushing those things into that space.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
challenging us to confront it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was fresh. That was new.
Yeah.
Definitely, that was something that was, I wouldn't say shocking, but it was wow. I could see it coming out of the calypso, and the mask, the costuming, the devils, the blue
Yeah.
devils, the black devils, You could see it coming out of that vibe.
Yeah.
But he did something else, I think, with it, He took it in a more sort of a absurdist way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
the absurdity of some of the things that he was, the philosophy behind some of the songs was different. It's not the sort of thing that we were experiencing in Calypso. I mean, he did have the party songs, but every song even the party songs made you think.
And also a bit of melancholy, a bit of,
Yeah. And musically, it's like nothing else. It's like nothing else that was going on. It's completely unique musical world,
I mean, I remember when Poverty is Hell came out and, like hearing him perform the song live, it was nothing like the recorded version because the musicians actually had to create a way to perform his song live that, and I mean, like Shadow was also on the cutting edge of this very electronic sound as well. Wildly. And then he was also, I mean, this song is pretty much a rap soul as well.
Of course,
Right?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, I mean, on so many levels, like genre defining,
absolutely.
Track.
It's one of the things that when I'm asked to do like mixtapes or to DJ, like I asked to DJ in France or whatever in Paris, and I play this, it blows people's minds. They're like, because it fits into their sonic world as well. They understand the electronicness of it and stuff. But there's something that is Trinidadian. It's a Trinidad vibe, But there was nothing else. Up to now, I think there's nothing else that sounds exactly like that. No. And when that came out, it was like, blew the top off your head. Yeah. What is this,
But I mean, Shadow had a few moments like that in his career,
absolutely.
I mean, this man certainly was that. And then, I mean, also a song like Sukriyan, which people don't necessarily know, but Sukriyan, to me, is like one of the most brilliant songs that Shadow ever did.
Yeah, of course, for real.
Yeah.
For real. I'm thinking he has an album, and it's got a song called Sugar Plum on it.
Yes.
That whole album has got a particular sound, a particular vibe. I think what the album's called. I forgot what it's called. But we'll figure it out.
So try to remember.
But that whole album has got a particularly laid back soca groove to it, which no one was trying at that time. No one was attempting that kind of vibe, you know. So Shadow, man. I mean, as you said, we could talk forever on Shadow. Yeah.
In terms of how somebody like Shadow would have influenced your own musical sound or your own experiments with what a Trinidad sound is, how do you define your sound?
Oh no, I mean definitely for me the sort of repetition in the music of Shadow, the sort of the drumming, the groove. If you take away the vocal, I mean the vocal is an important part of it, but if you take that away and you listen to the rhythm section, that repetitive thing kind of reminds me of the Baptist church, going to the Baptist church as a child with my grandparents, and that sort of repetitive, and that. I take that and put that, I try to include that in some of the music that we do, you know what I mean? Maybe not so much now, but at the beginning, definitely, of the stuff that we were doing with the Spasm band, let's say, that was percussion-based, kind of riffing off of that kind of Shadow vibe, and the rhapsody delivery as well. So big influence. I mean, I grew up listening to Shadow from a young age, So when I started doing music, I wanted to sort of draw on all those influences, the Baptist rhythm, the Baptist vibe, the Shadow repetitiveness, the dreadness of the voice. Try to draw on all of these things. You do it automatically. You don't have to think about it.
It's almost second nature.
It's what I know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Track 4.
You always making row. You could bet you could please, you must listen now. You always wanted me to make you so happy. Well, darling, I'll find the solution to your desire and ambition. Come, let me line, as the people say. Now is the time on Carnival Day. I want you come in town. Don't you let me down. Just throw on your morning duster and pick me up by Green Corner. We will be raging as it is there. I'll paint in the tongue in red. We go make bacchanal for this carnival.
The great Alwyn Roberts, Kitchener, Margie. Yeah. Tell me a Margie story.
Oh man. Well, you know, Kitchener, I think it was Superior that said everybody in Trinidad grew up listening to Kitchener, you know. And it's a fact, you know. I could have chosen, there's so many things to choose from Kitchener. You know, I'd spent about 8 years of my life researching Kitchener and his life and his music. This song for me is special though, because I remember speaking to Stalin, Black Stalin. I interviewed him, just a brief interview on the phone about his life with Kitchener, because he knew Kitchener well and they lived together with him for a time. And he told me the story how one night in, I don't know, it might have been 1969, he was staying with Kitchener and he went to a party in St. James. And in his own words, boy, I smoked Tampi. Dance with woman, lime, I drink, and I come home. He said he came back about 4 o'clock in the morning. And when he went into the house in Dago Martin where Kitchener was living, I think Rainorama or something, maybe before Rainorama. He said he went into the kitchen and Kitchener was there with his guitar at 4 in the morning on a little tape deck working on Margie. And he said, imagine that. I went and party, I do all this thing, I come back and the master is sitting working on Margie. And Margie ended up winning the road march. He said it's one of the only songs, which was a love song, a ballad essentially, that was able to win. You know, I think not until probably Bahia Girl did someone manage to pull that off, you know, a ballady, sort of mid-tempo love song, you know. And also, you know, I was able to interview Marge herself, you know, at some point, you know, who the song was written about. So that was pretty special. You know, they had a really deep love, you know, they were really, they had a real thing. So that song is true to life, you know, every word in there, you know. It was, I think what she explained to me was that she'd left Trinidad a few times. She went back and forth. And he would come to London and beg her to come back. That was one of the times that he came and begged her to come back to Trinidad, you know. It's in the song, you hear it. I want you coming town, don't you let me down. Just throw on your morning duster and pick me up.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Love songs are possible.
With Calypso,
With Calypso.
A lot of people say it's not a thing, but it is. There's a lot of history. There's a long history of love songs in Calypso, you know.
So what prompted you to look specifically at Kitchener? What was the draw for you?
You know, actually Lovelace asked me that same question. He's like, why Kitchener, you know? For me, I was in London when Kitchener died. Kitchener died in about 2000?
2001,
2000, I think. Yeah. And when he died, I felt the shock of it. It's like, wow, it's a big deal. It's a huge icon, a huge part of my understanding of what it was to be a Trinidadian. That was gone. And I started looking around to find out about his life. And there was nothing. There was like a few articles online, but there was no book that I could go to and say, okay, this is the life of Kitch. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This is a man who spent, 60 years making Calypso from the 1930s to when he died, and there's no central record of his life. So I decided I had to write it. You know. I mean, you know, and it involved a lot of research and a lot of piecing things together, but it was necessary. It was a necessary work because there was a feeling that people like that, you know, actually Pearl Connor says that there's no record of what we do in this country. There's like a hole that we fall into, you know. And I was thinking about that and thinking, you know, there's this hole that Kitchener is going to fall into now. He's just going to become this guy that did this calypso thing.
Yeah.
But somebody has to memorialize this life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what has the response been
The kid?
to Kitch, to the not really biography that you've written?
Well, it is a biography, you know, in the sense that it's all research. There's only a few small things that I expand on in a fictional way. But everything is based on something someone told me along the research journey.
Right.
You know, a lot of times someone might tell me a little short story. They might say, yeah, Kitchener used to see this woman here and he got into a fight and you know, and the woman husband come and they get into a fight. And that was all they told me. And I would be like, okay. And I expand that into a whole chapter, you know?
Yeah.
But everything was based on something.
Yeah.
The response has been good. It's been, you know, it's still something that people come to me and say, oh, I just read Kitch, and you know.
Yeah.
Even people in Trinidad, which was the litmus test, is always the test. How are people in Trinidad going to, you know? And the response has been good. People told me, thank you for doing this, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I did meet his family, and I met, you know, his kids or whatever, and spoke to them, interviewed them, you know.
Yeah.
Made sure they were okay with the whole process,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah. I had to do it right.
Yeah.
You know, and I tried. I mean, I think no biography is going to tell the whole story. A biography is only a beginning.
Yeah.
You know, so it is a beginning. Someone else, if they want to come and do the classic biography with the pictures in the middle, and they could do that. But for me, that's not what I wanted to do.
That's not what you wanted to do.
Nah. I think Kitchener deserves something a little bit different, something that was more community-based. Which is why the story is told from people in the community rather than just one voice, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going there? Short drop.
Oh, gosh. Tune upon tune.
With the flick of my wrist, here comes a new musical disc that will make you jump and twist to network, disco, rap show.
Simba for the resistance, dancing shoes. Nah, give a damn for your culture.
Yeah, man.
Oh, resistance. So many things we can say about resistance.
Yeah. You know, when I was going through the tracks, you know, I had a list originally about 20 different tracks, and I was like, I got to narrow this down to 7. And in the end, you end up with the giants, you know? You end up with the giants. You end up with the rudder, the sparrow, the kitch, the giants. Resistance. Yeah, my thing with resistance, man, when I was a kid, I remember coming home from school. I was in secondary school. And I came home from school and turned on the TV. And there was Network Rhythm Band with Resistance.
Yeah.
In the middle of the day, like 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Doing, I think, Ring the Bell.
Ring bell, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like that because I'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
I was like,
In
but
the
I was,
yellow satin outfit.
yes, yes.
In TTT
Yes,
studio.
in this small cramped
Yes,
space. Yeah. But I'd never seen anything like it. But it felt inevitable that someone was going to do that. Because we were coming, African consciousness through the 70s, it was coming, you could feel it in the Calypso in Shadow and, Valentino and people like that. So when I saw him, I was like, yes, this makes sense, but I've never seen it before in this rich, real context, it was different, man. It was really, really, it was something special. It was a shift, another shift in consciousness.
Yeah.
And I think that whole sort of early 80s period was interesting in Trinidad for me as well. I was getting a bit older and heading into town, going to the drag mall and that whole rich reggae, Jamaica, Trinidadian crossover vibe was happening. Music was organic still. There was no drum machine. It was a vibe. It was rootsy. So Resistance was very much a part of that. And also, as an influence in terms of his delivery and how he delivered the word and we kind of gravitate towards that as, I gravitated towards that as an artist, quite naturally.
Yeah. I want to talk about leaving Trinidad.
Yes. Okay.
What was the impetus to leave? And, how did you take Trinidad with you when you left?
Yeah. I'll try to be brief because that is a long thing. But, I grew up in a time in Trinidad in the 70s and the 80s where it was the thing to leave. We were still caught up in that post-colonial mentality where you have to leave Trinidad. Like success or whatever meant leaving Trinidad, going to the UK, going to the US, queuing up around the embassy, trying to get a visa to leave, So I got caught up in that mentality. That was part of my culture and part of the understanding. So that was one thing. The other thing was that I was growing up with my grandmother and grandfather. My grandfather was very strict. He was the kind of guy, if you come home late, he'd be waiting for you to, whatever, And my grandmother saw, and she explained this to me after a while, that she saw that I was getting to be a man and that there would be real conflict with me and him as I started to assert my identity and my maturity or whatever in his house.
Yeah.
I was probably 20 or whatever. And she kind of was looking for a way to get me out. And when the opportunity arose, she told me, go for it. She just said, you got to go. So she helped me. So that combined with this idea of, like Braithwaite says, the part of the Caribbean consciousness is to leave the Caribbean,
Yeah.
So that combined with that and the allure of coming to the UK, that was why.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I didn't feel like I'd outgrown the country and, I need, it wasn't a sense of outgrowing, it was a sense of taking a chance for me, taking a risk and trying to make it happen.
Yeah.
Sorry, in terms of keeping, what do you do? How do you keep it? The longer you leave the Caribbean is the more Caribbean you become. For me, definitely leaving Trinidad, I became more Trinidadian in that I held on to the food, I held on to my family, I held on to the music even tighter than when I was in Trinidad, Because that's your identity. You have to hold on to who you are, Otherwise,
you get licked up.
You get recolonized, So I was really, conscious of that and just naturally, I had to hold on to it tight.
Yeah.
And the more you hold on, I become more and more a Caribbean person,
Yeah.
And also having a sort of external vision of the Caribbean and Trinidad as well, you know, being able to see it and understand what it is. Still trying to figure it out, but
Yeah.
coming out of it made me have that a vantage point,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Short drop.
Laying around having fun and steady moving used to be my thing. Yeah. Wanting nothing, thinking I had everything, and then you came to me. Boy, I've never had someone so late in my life. The simple motion caused commotion inside me. I'm a sense of things when I hear your name, I get woozy baby. Oh baby, I got the motion, yeah, I got the motion. I need move me, baby. I got the motion, you got the motion. I need. The common line of friends of mine said, since you met that boy, you sure have changed. Yeah. They say I've lost control over everything I had control of. Things ain't the same. No. Boy, they'll never drink from the cup of love I drink from, and they'll never understand just where it comes from. They can't criticize, they can't analyze, they never see you. Oh baby, I got the motion, yeah, you got the motion. I need moving.
Carol Addison. Sweet, sweet voice. Groovy, groovy, groovy. I got the notion. So going back into the story, I mean, yes, I mean, I also want to talk about Carol, but I also want
Okay.
to talk about, you know, this idea that perhaps still pervades that we have to leave in order
Yeah.
to see our way. You know,
Yeah.
Andre Tanker talks about that, you know,
Yeah.
coming back home, coming back to yourself.
Right.
What was the reception when you arrived here? And you know, I mean, you've been toiling in the vineyards for a while.
Yeah.
Success comes in waves, in fits and starts.
Yeah.
And you know, you can say now that you are established
Yeah.
poet, novelist, musician, established authority, Caribbean voice,
Yeah.
etc. But what is the process to get to that point? How much violence is involved in that process? And certainly England is not a warm place,
Yeah. Yeah.
physically or emotionally.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's a good question, and it's you know, I think for me, I was quite naive, so maybe the blows and the licks, what Salvon calls the lash, I was just taking it and
Yeah.
just hey, you know, just keep going, you know what I mean? Yeah, I didn't sort of let it bring me down.
Yeah.
Because I was quite naive and quite, I was an artist and thinking the most important thing is the work. I'll just keep doing the work. I don't care if I'm poor. I don't care if I'm whatever. You know, I just keep going. You know, the work was its reward. You know, doing the work. You know.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it was for me, in that I didn't get tied up and bogged down.
Yeah.
I guess coming from Trinidad and not encountering, I guess, let's be frank, the racism that you encounter here, you know, the institutionalized and sometimes very direct racism. I wasn't used to it in Trinidad. You know, I didn't grow up with that around me. So coming here, I was like, whoa, this is kind of strange, but I kept going. I didn't let it demoralize me, you know.
Yeah.
I just kept going. And that sense of naivety and just keep working and just keep working. And also, I was never a big self-publicist. And I think that kind of worked in my favor in the sense that I just did my work and the work was considered kind of weird and strange and people wanted to know, they wanted to come into the world and see what I was doing rather than me having to go and sell it and, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it, the sort of a personality of being kind of mysterious or not being accessible. People wanted to sort of investigate the work further. And also I think that, you know, Britain, you know, Black British writing was kind of reaching a point where something new needed to happen. You know, I mean, when I started sort of publishing work in the 90s and all that, there were very few opportunities for Black writers to be published. Much less for someone doing something like science fiction or something experimental or whatever. And I think that was part of the attractiveness of it, that it was so, what I was doing was kind of different.
Yeah.
So that helped, you know, that helped get a lot of attention from maybe non-white readers, non-Black readers, which then, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to analyze your own thing, you know, but I think that that's part of it. Plus just really hard work, you know, staying up till 4 every morning writing, you know, that was, I did that, I still do that, you know, so it's the work.
Yeah. In terms of where Black British writing is now, you know, it seems like the world has opened up. I mean, you know, Black British writers are all the rage. I mean, you have Ayanna Lloyd, who's, you know, she's like on every short list. You know, how do you see, you know, the toiling that you've been doing, and also toiling in certain spaces? I mean, so like, for example, something like Bocas has created a new space of opportunity for writers. But how do you see your own work in terms of, you know, clearing a path, being a path clearer or an obstacle remover for another generation of writers who's coming now, and, you know, perhaps not encountering the same challenges that you would have encountered in the 90s when you first came out here?
Well, you know, I mean, I think I'm an elder now. You know, I think I've earned the status of being an elder now. Definitely when I started sort of taking writing seriously and taking a life as a poet, as a career, which was in the early 90s, you know, as I said, there was very little. There was a few of us, you know, there was Roger Robinson, Malika was around, I mean, Nick McCaw came a little bit later. There were a few of us. Patience Agbabi, Bernadine was around. But there was a handful of us, you know. And I definitely, I felt, did my own thing very much because I was coming from Trinidad and I had this sort of more eclectic sort of worldview about literature. I was reading, you know, surrealist literature from France. I was reading African-American writing. I was reading writing from Africa, whatever, you know. My, you know, sort of touchstones, the things that I was willing to bring into the cosmos was probably a bit wider than a Black British writer who'd grown up in the system, as you call it, of Babylon, Babylondon. You know, I was eclectic. I was really eclectic in my tastes, you know, and I drew on everything, and surrealism became a huge part of what I did. And then later on, I realized that surrealism was a Caribbean thing as well, you know. So then included that into the world.
Yeah.
So I guess the advice, so if I have any advice, is that you have to create a singular, unique voice in whatever you do. And that voice is essentially you. So you have to just find your own, that's what it means, finding your own voice.
Yeah.
I found my voice. And because I found a way of using that voice, that helped me to sort of transcend various things and to become, you know, someone that people might look up to and say, okay, you know, I like what you help me. How do you do this? How do you do that?
Yeah.
You know? Now I have students and PhD students that are like, you know, that I'm teaching and pushing it forward, you know.
Awesome. Short drop.
creation is only control. The whole universe become intense. And I know when words fail, the next step will be violence. Look, Mr. DJ, I don't want to hear them sad stories coming over the air. Give me something bad. Make it the baddest, bring the hardest hard. Forget them saddest while them studying crime. I come out to have a good time, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Them down. Listen, Mr. Music Man, there's too much dissatisfaction.
Versatile. Hardest hard. That reminds me of 80s ad. Harry Creed is the hardest hard.
No, I don't know.
Harry Creed was a concrete, what do you call it? What do you call that
concrete,
thing?
cement?
Concrete cement.
Yeah.
Harry Creed is the hardest hard. Anyway.
I don't know it, you know. Wow.
Yeah, but the hardest hard. I mean, interesting choice, but a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I like that one. Upskill.
Yeah.
Upskill. I
Yeah.
mean, Versatile is one of those artists in Trinidad that you very rarely hear about.
Yeah.
But he has contributed, some real
Yeah.
gems.
Yeah.
Real gems.
Yeah. This takes me back to when I first started collecting records, buying records. That was one of the records that I bought. I think maybe 79, 80. When I was going to school, secondary school, and I was able to save my little pennies and my little change and buy records, and that was the thing. And also, that disco funky influence as youngsters, as teenagers back then, that was our thing. That was what we were into. We were into the sort of crossover, the Carol Addisons, the Versatile, Shorty to a certain extent, you know, where calypso and soca was introducing a kind of funky African-American vibe and, disco, chandelier, all that kind of thing. Yeah, that was for us. It was interestingly, it was kind of a way of us rebelling against the status quo,
Yeah.
It was kind of us saying, we have something different here, It was kind of rebellious music in a way, because it was Trinidadian, but it was funky, It wasn't just calypso,
Yeah. Exciting time.
Yeah.
Exciting time. I mean, you talk about that period of your life quite a bit, like that time in Trinidad. How do you see Trinidad now? I mean, you haven't lived in Trinidad as an adult.
That's right.
You dip in and dip back out.
Yeah.
What is your perception of Trinidad now? Not just as, as an artist, but as somebody who left and made the decision to not come back.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, that is difficult. That's a deep thing. I think I gave up trying to feel that I was still in step with the people and the culture and everything. After about 5 years going back and forth, I left in '89, so in that first sort of early '90s period, I would go back and, "It's a Trini, I feel like I'm a Trini. But it was always, I felt I was kind of out of step, because it's not the kind of place that waits for you.
No.
Once you leave, it keeps going. So you're always a little bit behind. So I always was a bit annoyed that I couldn't fit back into the groove straight away,
Yeah.
And after a while I gave up. I was like, okay, you know what? I don't live here anymore. I live in London. I visit here. This is home, but I can't pretend that I know all the slang and I know all the things going on. I don't,
Yeah.
But in saying that, if I spend a long time there, which I don't really get the opportunity to do, but in the past I was able to spend like a month.
Yeah.
After about 2 weeks, I get back into it. I'm like, you sink back into the
Yeah.
rhythm, and I'm like, yeah, I'm back home, you know.
Yeah.
But going there for 2 weeks, it's Trinidad is, you know, I think I remember Lovelace doing a workshop once where he talked about linearity, how Western fiction goes in this linear thing. This happens, then that happens, then that happens. He says in Trinidad, you feel like everything happening at
Everything happening
the same time. So that's pretty much what I feel when I'm there now. It's a sense of a beautiful overload of the senses, which makes you remain in the present. For me, it's a place of presence.
Yeah.
It's a place where you have to be in the present. You can't be reflective and, oh, I wonder. You have to be in the step and be with the vibe and the energy of the space. Otherwise, you get
Run
you get
over.
left. Yeah, you get. So yeah, that's what I feel when I go back now. That it's really a place where everything is happening. You know, I'm trying to do Bocus and trying to go and hear writers, and my family is telling me, when we go in Toko, when we doing this, you know, and it's like, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. But I accept the fact that I don't live there.
Yeah.
And I accept the fact that, you know, one day I'll probably go back and live there. But right now, you know, I have to look at it as someone who is outside of it. But that is also being Trinidadian. That's a
Yeah.
Trinidadian culture, and that's a Trinidadian heritage. Being the Trinidadian that is in the diaspora is a kind of Trinidadian in the same
also
sense.
a
You know,
Trinidadian.
it's a Trinidadian. It's a kind of
Yeah.
Trinidadian.
Yeah.
And England is kind of part of the Trinidadian consciousness as well, you know?
Yeah.
So there's all of these things. So yeah, I see myself as a Trini, more Trini.
More Trini.
More Trini, and I see Trinidad as still, you know,
Yeah.
home and yeah.
Yeah.
You know, where my neighbor's stringberry, as we say, you know what I mean? But Trinidad is mad. It's a nutty place, man. It's a strange.
To end with a quote from Rudder, the international chantwell, concrete jungle drum can't play no calypso.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could try. It could try.
Yeah.
And that's why you have places like Veg and Tings and Fish Wings and Tings and Brian trying to create spaces like this. So big love to Brian for welcoming us into this space and also providing a space for us to have a little taste of home every now and again. Thank you so much,
It's been a pleasure.
Anthony, for sharing your tunes
Yeah.
and for
Yeah, I'm glad we did it.
a little reasoning
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, it's an impossible task to choose 7 tracks or 8
I'm
tracks.
sorry.
But I managed it.
And
Yeah.
actually, you get a lanyard.
I get a lanyard,
You get a
okay.
lanyard. You have a lanyard from Anthony.